I was lying in what looked, for all intents and purposes, like a private hospital room, watching my children discuss how to divide my inheritance. My eldest, David, was already mentally auctioning off my art collection. Sarah, my little girl, was calculating how much the sale of my house would net her. And Michael, my free-spirited baby, was wondering if my classic car could be sold to fund his next spiritual journey. They didn't know the soft hum wasn't a heart monitor, but the air conditioning of a luxury hotel suite. They didn't know the papers I was signing weren't to last will and testament, but documents transferring every last dime I owned to a charitable foundation. And they certainly didn't know their gravely ill mother was about to teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives. If you're ready for this journey, be sure to hit the subscribe button and like this post so you don't miss any updates. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. It's always nice to see where everyone is. My name is Marilyn. I'm 68 years old, and for 40 of those years, I ran a moderately successful chain of specialty kitchenware stores. I'm not talking about big box retail. I sold high-end, artisanal items, the kind of hand-painted Italian pottery that costs more than a used car, and copper pans that you polish more than you actually cook with. I built the business from a single storefront in a trendy neighborhood into a regional name. It was my fourth baby, the one that never talked back, never asked for allowance, and actually appreciated the effort I put into it. My other three babies, David, Sarah, and Michael, were a different story. I love my children. I need to say that, and I need you to believe it, because the rest of the story might make it seem otherwise. But my love for them had become complicated. It felt like a one-way street paved with my money. I put all three of them through college, top-tier universities that left them with prestigious degrees and zero student loan debt. I gave each of them the down payment for their first home, a generous no-strings-attached check that catapulted them into a lifestyle their peers would have to work a decade to achieve. When they got married, I threw them fairy tale weddings. When they had kids, Grandma's college fund was my first gift. I didn't just give them a safety net. I gave them a golden trampoline. Looking back, that was my mistake. I thought I was giving them a head start, a foundation upon which they could build their own empires. Instead, I had given them a finish line. They had arrived before the race even began. David, now 42, went into finance. He wears tailored suits and speaks in a language of acquisitions, mergers, and market volatility. He married a woman just as ambitious as he is, and they have two perfect children who attend an elite private school. David sees me as a bank. Our phone calls were always bookended with a request: a small bridge loan to close a deal, an investment in a can't-miss startup, or help with a down payment on a bigger, better house in a more exclusive zip code. He always framed it as an opportunity for me to grow my wealth. But we both knew whose wealth was really growing. Sarah, my only daughter, is 38. She's a full-time mother to three beautiful and equally spoiled children. Her husband is a decent man, an architect who makes good money, but not enough to support the lifestyle Sarah felt she deserved. She was a master of the passive-aggressive plea. "Oh, Mom, we'd love to take the kids to Disney World this year, but with the property taxes and Ben's braces, it's just impossible." A week later, a check would be in the mail. Her gratitude was effusive, full of, "You're the best mom in the world." But the calls only came when the well was drawing dry. Then there's Michael, my 32-year-old wanderer. He's never held a job for more than 6 months. He's been a ski bum in Colorado, a yoga instructor in Bali, a landscape painter in New Mexico. I admired his spirit. I really did. But his spirit was funded by the Bank of Mom. His requests were for life-affirming experiences, $1,000 to attend a silent meditation retreat, $5,000 for a van to live authentically on the road, another few grand for a new camera to document his journey. He believed that money was the root of all evil, except when it was being direct deposited into his account. The wake-up call came about 6 months ago. I had a dizzy spell while gardening. It was nothing serious, just a bout of dehydration and low blood pressure, but it was enough to land me in the emergency room for a few hours. I called the kids from the hospital, my voice a little shaky, and told them what happened.
David's response, "Mom, are you okay? I'm in the middle of a huge negotiation. Can I call you back this evening? Text me the doctor's info. My assistant will follow up." He never called back. His assistant sent a bouquet of lilies to my house the next day. Lilies. Funeral flowers. Sarah's response? "Oh my God, Mom, that's terrifying. I'd come right now, but little Chloe has a terrible fever and I can't possibly leave her." Later that day, I saw a picture on her social media feed of Chloe at a friend's pool party, looking suspiciously robust. Michael's response? A text message 2 hours later. "Whoa, Mom, heavy. Sending you healing vibes from the coast. You need to align your chakras. I'll light some sage for you." I sat in my perfectly arranged, lily-scented living room that evening and felt a kind of coldness I hadn't experienced before. It wasn't just disappointment. It was a profound sense of loneliness. My children, the people I had dedicated my life to, couldn't be bothered to drive 30 minutes to see if I was alive. Their concern was a checklist item. David delegated it to an assistant. Sarah lied her way out of it, and Michael sent a puff of smoke. And just when I thought I was sinking into a real depression about it, my best friend, Eleanor, showed up with a bottle of ridiculously expensive wine and a mischievous glint in her eye. She listened to my whole sad story, nodding patiently, and when I was done, she didn't offer sympathy, she offered a solution. "So," she said, pouring 2 large glasses, "they failed the dress rehearsal. Let's see how they do on opening night." He was going to get exactly what he deserved, and I had a front row seat. Don't go anywhere. Eleanor, you have to understand, is not your typical 60-something. She's a retired litigator who spent 40 years eviscerating smug corporate lawyers in courtrooms. She has a mind like a steel trap and a spine to match. The word subtlety is not in her vocabulary. Her plan was audacious, theatrical, and utterly brilliant. "They see you as an ATM, Marilyn," she explained, pacing in front of my fireplace. "You need to show them the machine is out of order, permanently." The plan, which we dubbed Operation Final Withdrawal, was simple in its premise but complex in its execution. I would fake a catastrophic illness. Not a heart attack or a stroke, nothing so sudden. We needed something slow, something that required care, time, and sacrifice, something that would force their hands. Eleanor's research led to a rare degenerative neurological disorder. It sounded terrifying, had vague, hard-to-pin-down symptoms, and most importantly, would give me a plausible life expectancy of 6 to 12 months. Eleanor handled the logistics with the precision of a military strategist. She hired a private concierge doctor, a semi-retired physician with a gambling problem who was happy to have a few old debts cleared in exchange for signing some official-looking letters and being on call for a consultation if needed. She then scouted our location, the presidential suite at the Grandmont. It had a separate living area, a cavernous bedroom, and was known for its discretion. The hotel staff was told I was a reclusive author writing my memoirs and required absolute privacy. We had medical equipment, a hospital bed, an IV stand filled with saline, a heart monitor which played a soothing EKG sound effect from a looped video on a hidden tablet. It looked shockingly real. The day we set the plan in motion felt like a strange dream. I put on my best silk pajamas and a face of weary resignation. Eleanor, playing the role of the distraught but stoic best friend, made the calls. "David, it's Eleanor. You need to come to the hospital. It's your mother. It's not good." One by one, she called them. And one by one, they came. Not to the hotel, of course. We told them that I'd been admitted to an exclusive private clinic 2 hours away, far enough to be an inconvenient drive, but close enough that they had no excuse not to come. I watched them on a hidden camera feed Eleanor had set up in the waiting area of the clinic, which was actually a rented office space we'd sparsely decorated. David arrived first, already on his phone, barking orders. Sarah was next, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. Michael rolled in last, wearing Birkenstocks and a look of existential angst.
Dr. Miller, our indebted physician, gave them the news. His performance was masterful. He used terms like rapid decline, multifocal degeneration, and palliative care. He told me I was weak, confused, and probably wouldn't recognize them. He said my time was short.
From my hospital bed at the Grandmont, I watched the three of them on the secure video feed Eleanor had patched to my laptop. The moment the doctor left them alone, the masks began to slip. "I can't believe it," Sarah said, though she sounded more inconvenienced than heartbroken. "Her portfolio is heavily invested in tech right now," David mused, already staring at his phone. "We should probably look at reallocating for estate purposes." "I hope she has a living will," Michael sighed. "I just don't think I can handle making those kinds of decisions for her, you know? It's bad for my aura." That night, they started a new group chat. They titled it Family Business. Eleanor had, through means I did not ask her to elaborate on, gained access. My phone, lying on the silk sheets next to me, became a window into their souls. David: "Has anyone seen Mom's will? I know Dad's lawyer, Henderson, retired. I can't seem to recall who she uses now." Sarah: "I think it's in the top drawer of her desk, the antique one in the study. She said everything was to be divided equally." "Equally is a relative term, Sarah. I've put a lot more sweat equity into managing her finances over the years. You've just been, you know." "What's that supposed to mean? I'm the one who gave her grandchildren. Do you know how much joy that brought her? You can't put a price on that." "Guys, please, let's not talk about money right now. It's just so base. Also, I call dibs on the convertible. It would really complete my vibe." I felt a hollow laugh bubble up in my chest. There I was, supposedly fading away in a sterile room, and my children were bartering for my belongings like vultures circling a dying animal. The antique desk Sarah mentioned was a piece I had refinished by hand with her when she was a teenager. The convertible Michael wanted was the car I'd bought myself as a gift after securing my company's first multi-million-dollar contract. Every object they named had a memory attached, a memory they were erasing with a dollar sign. The fight escalated quickly, devolving into a bitter rehash of every perceived slight and financial gift from the past 20 years. It was ugly, petty, and deeply revealing. While they squabbled over my earthly possessions, I was sitting with Eleanor and a team of wealth managers, systematically dismantling the very empire they were so eager to inherit. It was glorious. There's a strange sort of clarity that comes from watching your own eulogy being written in real time, especially when it's an itemized list. While my children were digitally tagging my furniture, Eleanor and I were executing the most significant business deal of my life. My sick room became a boardroom. We had conference calls with my new legal team, a razor-sharp young woman named Anna who specialized in trusts and estate planning, and who looked at Eleanor with unabashed hero worship. The first order of business was to liquidate. Anna and her team moved like a silent financial hurricane. My stock portfolio was sold off, my various investment accounts were closed, and the funds were funneled into a single, untouchable trust. We started the process of listing my commercial properties for sale under the guise of portfolio consolidation. It was a whirlwind of paperwork, signatures, and encrypted emails. In 3 days, I had converted the bulk of my 40-year career into a staggering amount of liquid cash. We established the Sterling Foundation. I chose the name as a small, private joke. Sterling, as in genuine, high-quality silver, the very thing my children had proven not to be. The foundation's mission was twofold: providing seed capital for female entrepreneurs over 50 who were starting their own businesses, and funding scholarships for underprivileged students wanting to go into skilled trades: plumbers, electricians, carpenters. It was a tribute to my own late start in business and to my father,
who was a master cabinet maker and always said that a person who could build something with their own two hands would never truly be poor. It was, in every conceivable way, the philosophical opposite of the life of unearned privilege I had handed to my children. Each signature felt like a release. With every stock I sold, I let go of the pressure to provide David with another can't-miss opportunity. With every property deed I signed over to the foundation, I released the guilt Sarah had so masterfully used to manipulate me into funding her keeping up with the Joneses lifestyle. With every dollar that flowed into the trust, I let go of the enabling that had kept Michael a perpetual adolescent. I wasn't just moving money. I was shedding 40 years of emotional baggage. It was the most liberating experience of my life.
I know this sounds cold, but watching them strategize my decline was the final confirmation I needed. The truth was about to come out, and it would be glorious. The group chat continued to be a goldmine of their true natures. Sarah, has anyone thought about, care? We can't all just drop everything. I have the kids. David, I've looked into it. There are some excellent long-term care facilities, top of the line. Of course, they're pricey. It'll eat into the principle of the estate, but we have a fiduciary duty. I had to laugh at that. David's fiduciary duty had never extended to my actual well-being, only to the preservation of his future windfall. Michael, I don't feel good about putting her in a facility. It sounds so sterile. But I'm in the middle of a big creative project right now, and I need to be in a specific headspace. The stress would crush my muse. In 2 days of messaging, not one of them suggested taking me into their own home. Not one of them suggested creating a rotating schedule to come and sit with me. Their primary concern was how to outsource their responsibility in the most financially prudent way possible. Then came the message I had been waiting for. David, we need to go see her, all of us. We need to assess the situation for ourselves and, frankly, show a united front. We should also have a chat with her doctor. I'll clear my schedule for Friday morning. No excuses. Eleanor and I looked at each other. It's showtime, she said, her eyes alight with the thrill of the fight. Prepping the rented office space for their visit was like a scene out of a spy movie. Eleanor was in her element. She had Dr. Miller prepped and rehearsed. She swapped the sparse furniture for slightly more comfortable but still suitably depressing waiting room chairs. She even had the air conditioning turned down to give the place a clinical chill. My part was simple. I had to get into costume, drive 2 hours with Eleanor, and be convincingly near death for about 20 minutes. I put on a ratty, washed-out hospital gown over my clothes. Eleanor used makeup to make my face look pale and drawn, with dark circles under my eyes. She even put a dab of some awful medicinal-smelling ointment on me for good measure. She said, "They remember smells." Lying in that sterile rented room under fluorescent lights was the first time this charade felt truly awful. For a moment, I wasn't a savvy woman in control. I was just a mother about to lie to my children's faces. The ache was real. But then I looked at the transcript of their group chat that Eleanor had printed out for me, and the resolve hardened in my veins again. They arrived together. Through the slightly ajar door, I watched Dr. Miller greet them. He steered them into a small conference room for a pre-visit briefing. His decline has been precipitous, he said, his voice heavy with fake gravity. He's mostly unresponsive. There are moments of lucidity, but they're fleeting. The most important thing is not to agitate her. Keep your voices calm and your visit brief. Then they were brought in. The three of them stood in the doorway looking awkward and out of place. David, in his perfectly pressed suit, looked like he was about to make a hostile takeover bid on my deathbed. Sarah had her purse clutched in front of her like a shield. Michael was fidgeting, his eyes darting everywhere but at me. "Mom," Sarah whispered. I let my head loll to the side, my eyes fluttering open slowly. I tried to focus on her face, then let my gaze drift away as if I couldn't quite hold on. I'd practiced the move in the hotel mirror. It was surprisingly effective. Sarah produced a single, perfect tear that rolled down her cheek. I think it even surprised her. David stepped forward, all business. "Mom, it's David. We're here. We're all here." His voice was loud, as if he were talking to a foreigner who didn't understand the language. I raised a slightly trembling hand and let it drop, a gesture of futility. Michael hung back. "She doesn't look like herself," he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. And in that moment, I almost broke. He was right. I wasn't myself. I was a character I was playing to teach them a lesson I should have taught them decades ago. The ache was real. Their visit lasted less than 10 minutes. They spoke in hushed, reverent tones, not to me, but about me, as if I were a piece of furniture. "She seems comfortable," Sarah said. "The doctor is very thorough," David noted. "The energy in this place is really stagnant," Michael complained. After they left, patting my hand with the detached pity one might give a stray animal, I waited until Eleanor gave me the all-clear. On the drive back to the hotel, she played the audio she'd recorded from a bug planted in a floral arrangement in the waiting room.
"Well, that was sobering," Sarah said once they were clear of the clinic. "She's gone," David stated, not with sadness, but with finality. "Her mind is completely shot. Did you see her eyes? Nothing there." "This simplifies things." "What do you mean, simplifies things?" Sarah asked, her voice sharp. "I mean, she's not in a position to make her own decisions, not about her health, not about her finances. Henderson, the old family lawyer, drew up power of attorney documents years ago, naming me as the primary. I think it's time to activate that. For her own good, of course." Eleanor shot me a look, a mixture of triumph and disgust. That was it. That was the ace. The attempt to seize legal control over my assets while I was incapacitated was the final nail in their collective coffin. And just when I thought their behavior couldn't get any worse, David opened his mouth again. Stay with me, because what he suggested next took the whole thing to a new level of monstrous. "This facility seems adequate," David continued in the car, "but it's a private pay boutique clinic. Very expensive. The monthly cost is astronomical. I've done some preliminary research. There's state-funded facilities that offer perfectly acceptable levels of care for a fraction of the cost. Once I have power of attorney, my first move will be to transfer her. It's the most responsible way to manage our resources long-term." There it was. He wanted to use my money to prove I was incompetent, then seize control of that money, and then move me into a cheap, state-run nursing home to die so he could maximize the inheritance. My son, my firstborn, the boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged and whose first-grade report card was still tucked away in a box of treasures. He was planning to discard me like a piece of used equipment to save a buck. Sarah and Michael didn't even protest. There was a moment of silence, and then Sarah's voice, small and complicit. "Would we still be able to visit?" "Of course," David said soothingly, "but our primary duty now is to protect her legacy." Back in the luxury of my hotel suite, the fake illness washed away and was replaced by a cold, hard rage. The sadness was gone, the doubt was gone. They had talked about preserving my legacy. Oh, I would preserve it, all right. I was about to create a legacy so profound, so public, and so utterly inaccessible to them that it would haunt them for the rest of their miserable, entitled lives. Eleanor was already on the phone with Anna, our lawyer. "She's making a move for power of attorney," she said. "We need to accelerate the timeline." The game had just changed. They thought they were taking control. They had no idea I had already won. Protect her legacy, David had said. Those words echoed in the suite, turning my righteous anger into something cold and sharp, like a shard of ice. He wasn't wrong. I was going to protect my legacy. I was going to encase it in a fortress of philanthropy so thick and so absolute that their grasping hands could never touch it. They thought they were managing my end. They had no idea I was planning their beginning, the beginning of a life without me as its financial and emotional center. He's going to file for an emergency conservatorship. He'll claim you're incapacitated and a danger to your own financial well-being. He'll use Dr. Miller's bogus diagnosis as primary evidence. And what's our move? Eleanor asked, already pulling a legal pad toward her. We detonate a truth bomb, Anna replied without a moment's hesitation. First, Marilyn, you need to go to a real doctor today. I've already scheduled an appointment with a leading neurologist at a major hospital. You'll undergo a full cognitive and physical assessment. We need a clean bill of health, certified, dated, and notarized after your children's visit to the clinic. That document will be our shield. It makes his claim of sudden incapacity fraudulent. Next, Anna instructed me to draft and sign a new ironclad power of attorney, naming Eleanor as my agent, effective immediately. We had a notary come to the hotel suite within an hour. The document was time-stamped, videotaped, and securely filed. David was trying to pick a lock, knowing I had already changed the entire door.
While I was being prodded and tested by a very confused but thorough neurologist, who declared me fitter than most people 30 years your junior, Eleanor was overseeing the final stages of the asset transfer. My beautiful home, the one with the garden I had so carefully tended, the one where I had hosted decades of holiday dinners and patched up scraped knees, was the final piece. I'd thought of selling it, but that felt too impersonal. Instead, I called the dean of the local community college. I told him the Sterling Foundation was gifting the entire property, fully furnished, to be used as a president's house or a facility for hosting charitable events. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line, followed by stammering gratitude. The house, their childhood home they were already mentally redecorating, would now serve the very community they had always looked down upon. The process of emptying it was surgical. Eleanor hired a discreet moving company. They packed my personal keepsakes, photographs, letters, my father's handmade toolbox, and put them in a secure storage facility. Everything else, every stick of furniture, every painting David was eyeing, every piece of silver Sarah was coveting, now belonged to the college. They were vultures circling an empty nest. The family business chat, meanwhile, was heating up. David spoke to my lawyer. He's confident. We'll file the petition for conservatorship Monday morning. He says, given her condition, no judge will object. We should have full control by the end of the week. Sarah, oh, thank goodness. I was so worried. When this is all over, I want to go through Mom's jewelry. Not for myself, of course. For my Chloe. There are a few family pieces she should have. Michael, speaking of which, is now a bad time to ask about the convertible again? I just feel like it's symbolic of a kind of freedom she'd want for me. They were so confident, so smug. It never once occurred to them that I could have a mind of my own, that their sweet, accommodating mother was capable of anything other than a slow, profitable fade-out. They had never really seen me as a person, only as a provider. Now, the provider was about to turn the tables in a way they could never, in their wildest dreams, anticipate. He was going to get exactly what he deserved, and I had a front row seat. Don't go anywhere. With the legal protections in place and the assets secured, all that was left was the reveal.
A letter felt too quiet, a phone call too easy to dismiss. Eleanor, in her infinite theatrical wisdom, had a better idea. "You don't just close a show, Marilyn," she said, pouring us both a celebratory glass of champagne in my hotel suite. "You have a closing night gala. You take a bow, you receive your standing ovation." The plan was brilliant. We would host the inaugural fundraising gala for the Sterling Foundation. It wouldn't be a quiet affair. We would invite everyone: my old business associates, friends, community leaders, and the local press. And of course, the guests of honor. Anna's law firm drafted the invitations. They were printed on thick, creamy cardstock with elegant gold lettering. They read, "The law offices of Fletcher, Kane & Associates cordially invite you to a special announcement regarding the estate and legacy of Mrs. Marilyn Sterling. The event will be held to honor her lifetime of work and to launch her next great chapter." The invitation was a masterpiece of misdirection. Estate and legacy would make them think of inheritance. Special announcement would make them think the money was about to be distributed. Her next great chapter would be interpreted by them as a flowery euphemism for the end of my life. Their greed would be their guide. They would walk into that ballroom expecting a funeral, only to find a resurrection. The chatter in their group text when the invitations arrived was pure, uncut avarice. "Sarah, it's here. David, you got one too, right? It looks so official. Is this the will reading?" "David, it's not a will reading, Sarah. That's not how it works. This will be a preliminary meeting with her estate lawyers to outline the next steps. It seems they're handling it." "Good. This is probably when my power of attorney officially kicks in. We need to present a united, solemn front. Wear black." Michael: "A bit dramatic, don't you think? Still, this feels like momentous. The closing of one door, the opening of another. Does anyone think they'll hand out, like, preliminary checks?"
Reading their words, I didn't feel a flicker of doubt. I didn't even feel anger anymore. It was all replaced by a calm, crystalline sense of purpose. For their entire lives, I had cushioned their falls. I had removed every obstacle. I had handed them a life of comfort without consequence. I realize now that the greatest disservice you can do to a person is to rob them of the satisfaction of their own accomplishments, to remove the struggle that builds character. I was about to give them their first real struggle. It was, in its own twisted way, the best gift I had ever given them. The night of the gala, I felt a strange sense of peace. I chose my dress with care, a shimmering sheath of emerald green silk. Not a color of mourning, but of life, of money, of rebirth. My hair and makeup were done professionally. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a frail, dying old woman. I saw Marilyn Sterling, founder and CEO. I saw a woman who had built an empire and who was about to build another one on the rubble of her children's expectations. Eleanor stood beside me, resplendent in a deep crimson gown. "Ready to watch some fireworks?" she asked, handing me a glass of water. "I'm ready to light the fuse," I said. We took a private elevator down to the hotel ballroom. I could hear the murmur of the crowd on the other side of the doors. 200 people who had come to support what they thought was my posthumous foundation. Through a small peephole, I saw my children arrive. They were dressed in somber, expensive black, their faces arranged in masks of practiced grief. David looked stern and important. Sarah looked elegantly sorrowful. Michael just looked confused, as if he'd accidentally wandered onto the wrong movie set. They found their reserved table at the front, right next to the podium, the best seats in the house for the show they didn't know they were the stars of. The event began. The chairman of the community college board gave a moving speech about my unprecedented generosity. The head of a local women's business association spoke about what my mentorship had meant to her. Tributes were paid.
Toasts were made to my memory. Through it all, I watched my children on a monitor in the back room. They nodded solemnly. Sarah dabbed at her eyes. David looked at his watch. Finally, the moment came. Anna stepped up to the podium. "And now," she said, her voice ringing through the silent ballroom, "I would like to introduce the one person who can truly speak to the vision of the Sterling Foundation, the woman whose hard work made this all possible and whose passion will drive its future. Please welcome the founder and chairwoman, Mrs. Marilyn Sterling." The heavy ballroom doors swung open. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and stepped into the light. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. For a full 3 seconds, 200 people held a collective breath. It was the kind of silence that's so complete, it has its own sound. A high, ringing hum. Then came the gasps, a wave of whispers, and then, slowly at first, then thunderously, applause. People were on their feet, their faces a mixture of astonishment, delight, and confusion. They were clapping for a woman they thought they had come to mourn. But I wasn't looking at them. My eyes were fixed on one table, front and center. I watched as the blood drained from David's face, leaving behind a pallor that was a more convincing shade of grief than anything at all he had faked. Sarah's perfectly made-up face crumpled, her jaw slack with disbelief. A small choked sound escaped her throat, and Michael, dear lost Michael, looked back and forth between me and the large portrait of me on the stage as if his brain was trying to solve an impossible math equation. The prodigal mother had returned, and she had not come to slaughter the fatted calf. She had come to burn down the whole farm.
I walked gracefully to the podium, the green silk of my dress flowing around me. I leaned into the microphone, the applause dying down into an expectant hush. "Please, please sit down," I said, my voice warm and steady. I smiled, a genuine, wide smile that reached my eyes. "It seems there has been a slight misunderstanding. I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate not an ending, but a new beginning." I looked directly at my children. David's eyes were narrow slits of fury. Sarah was now openly weeping, but these were not her crocodile tears from the clinic. These were the hot, messy tears of pure humiliation. Michael was just staring, his mouth a perfect O of bewilderment. "As many of you know," I continued, turning my attention back to the room, "I recently had something of a health scare. It gave me a great deal of time to think about the word legacy. What does it mean? Is it the money you leave behind, the possessions you accumulate, or is it the impact you have, the lives you change for the better?" I let the question hang in the air. I concluded that a true legacy isn't something you leave to a few people, it's something you build for many. That is why, effective immediately, I have endowed my entire estate, every stock, every property, every last dollar, to the Sterling Foundation. A fresh wave of gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. The foundation will focus on 2 things that are very close to my heart. First, providing startup capital for women over 50, women like me, who have a lifetime of experience but are too often overlooked. Second, it will fund scholarships for young people pursuing the skilled trades, honoring my father, who taught me the value of building something real with your own 2 hands. I paused, and my gaze drifted back to my children's table. Some people are lucky enough to be given a head start in life, but I've come to believe that the greatest gift one can receive is not a safety net, but a reason to learn how to fly on your own. It is the gift of self-reliance, the gift of a blank page, the gift of facing the world on your own terms and discovering the strength you never knew you had. I raised my glass of water.
So tonight, I ask you not to mourn my passing, but to celebrate my purpose. To the Sterling Foundation, may it be a launching pad for dreams for years to come." The ovation was deafening. As people surged forward to congratulate me, I saw David get to his feet. He moved toward the stage with the predatory stillness of a shark. Eleanor, ever my guardian angel, was there in an instant, flanked by Anna. He ignored her, his eyes locked on me. "What is this?" he hissed, his voice low and trembling with rage. "What have you done?" "I've secured my legacy, David," I said calmly. "You've lost your mind. You were declared incompetent. I have medical records." Anna stepped forward, placing herself between us. "You mean the fraudulent records from a disgraced doctor who is currently being investigated for malpractice, Mr. Sterling? Or perhaps you'd prefer we discuss the certified neurological assessment Mrs. Sterling took 2 days ago, which finds her to be in the top percentile for cognitive function in her age group? We can, if you'd like, in court." She leaned in closer. "And if you even think about contesting this, we will be filing a countersuit for attempted fraud and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. We have the complete transcripts from a certain group chat titled Family Business. I imagine a jury would find them compelling." The color drained from David's face again. He had been so sure of his power. He never considered mine. Sarah was next, stumbling toward me, her husband trailing uselessly behind her. "Mom, how could you? What about your grandchildren? What about us? We're your family." "Yes, you are, and I've given your children a far greater inheritance than money. I have given them the gift of watching their parents build a life on their own. You and Ben are capable people, Sarah. It's time you believed that." She just shook her head, unable to comprehend a world where her problems weren't solved by a check from her mother. Finally, there was Michael. He stood before me, looking like a little boy. There was no anger in his eyes, only a profound and deep confusion. "I don't get it, Mom. I thought you were sick."
"I was, sweetheart," I told him, and it was the truest thing I had said all night. I was sick of being an ATM. I was sick of being taken for granted. I was sick with a loneliness that no amount of money could cure. But I'm better now. He just stared at me. "But what about the convertible?" I almost laughed. It was so perfectly Michael. The convertible was sold, and the money helped fund a scholarship for a young woman who wants to be a master mechanic. I think she'll get more mileage out of it than you ever would. I turned my back on them then, on all of them. I let Eleanor and Anna handle the fallout as I was swept into a crowd of well-wishers, of old friends who were seeing me for the first time in years, of strangers whose lives I was about to change. For the first time, I felt seen not as a source of funds, but as a force of nature. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. David's big-shot financial career, which I now realized was propped up by my constant investments and bailouts, crumbled. He and his wife had to sell their massive house and pull their kids from private school. His power came from the illusion of wealth, and when that illusion shattered, so did he. The public humiliation was total. Sarah and her husband are still together, but their lifestyle took a nosedive. She had to get a part-time job as a receptionist at a dentist's office. I hear she complains constantly. Her social media, once a curated gallery of lavish vacations and designer bags, is now mostly pictures of her garden. It's a start, I suppose. Michael was the most surprising. After a few months of couch surfing and trying to live off his aura, he hit rock bottom. He got a job as a barista. And then another one, working for a landscaping company. He wrote me a letter 6 months ago. It was short, messy, and smelled vaguely of mulch. He said he was tired all the time and his hands were calloused, but that for the first time in his life, he felt like he'd actually earned his dinner. He didn't ask for money, he just wanted to say he was sorry and that he was starting to understand. As for me, I'm 70 years old now, and I've never been busier. I sit on the board of my foundation, I mentor the women we fund, I attend every scholarship ceremony. My house is a small, manageable condo with a beautiful view of the city. My days are filled with purpose, with people who are grateful, and with a profound sense of peace. I gave away my fortune, and in return, I got my life back. It was a brutal, painful, and absolutely necessary amputation, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. So, now you've heard it all. I leave you with this question. What would you do if you were me?
My grandmother told me this story. Thanks for watching this video. Bye bye!